agree with that view, that Holmes obscured his finer writings. The White Company, St. Nigel, the Gerard stories and so on, which have been in print, after all, for 80 years, in the case of the White Company, never out of print, which, to my way of thinking, is a proof of immortality in a book of great literature. And he felt rightly that Holmes was obscuring his more important work.
There's been a good deal of speculation as to who was the original for Sherlock Holmes. Was there a person on whom the character of Sherlock Holmes was based?
The character, no. The methods, yes. My father's old professor, Dr. Bell, was certainly the model on which the methods of Sherlock Holmes are based. The methods of observation and deduction began and ended there. The personality of Holmes and the way of putting those methods into practice in real-life crime did not belong to Bell at all. It belonged to my father. And Bell himself was one of the first to see that, because he wrote to my father and said, "If you are yourself Sherlock Holmes, and well you know it."
How did your father feel about that?
He admitted it at the very end of his life. When he knew he was dying, he gave one last interview to an American journalist. This is in 1930. And he said, "I confess now that if anybody was Sherlock Holmes, it was myself." Of course, all the criminologists knew it right away. That's why the French named, for instance, the Sûreté police laboratories at Lyon, the laboratory of Conan Doyle. They recognized at once, and they were continuously in correspondence with my father about many famous cases. I have in my files an article, a leader from the Times, written about 2 years before my father created Holmes, pointing out that the results of Scotland Yard were obtained entirely through chance, that there was no method, absolutely just all chance. And he invented a system whereby things like cigarette ashes, dust, other things of that nature, should yield their own message, their own story. Up to then, nobody done this. And that is why you get a man like Locard, who's today recognized as probably the greatest criminologist, he with Lombroso, that Europe's ever produced, has put it on record in these words: "If we are interested in dust today, it is because of the ideas which we've imbibed from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The use of plaster of Paris for preserving delicate marks, and so on. All this came through Holmes. Now, Holmes was a puppet sitting on my father's knee. His ideas, his words, spoke through Holmes. And so it's really very difficult to differentiate one man from the other. They both belong to each other, with this mass of contradictions, which makes up Sherlock Holmes. A lot of that belonged to my father. Not the misogynist, but the rest of it, not the violin playing and not the drugging, but all the rest of Holmes's habits belonged to my father. He was an excellent boxer. He was very untidy. He had this mind that sometimes was crystal clear and other times was dreaming. There was a great deal of the self-portrait.
You've written Holmes stories yourself, haven't you, since your father's death?
Yes, I did one book, The Exploits of Sherlock Holmes. The last 6 or 7 stories were done by me alone because my old friend Dixon Carr fell very ill. We collaborated over the first 4 or 5. The remaining stories were written entirely by myself alone.
Do you find the stories easy to write?
No. Far more difficult than my father. Because, see, I know that if I go outside the picture, remember, he was brought up in that period, I was not. If I make one mistake, all his enthusiasts will be all over me. The Japs will be on my neck, the Russians will be on my neck, the English, the French, everybody who reads Holmes say, worthless son, he's made an error. And I made one. And had the whole lot on me. One only. I had the bell or the fire engine going in, I think it was in a story which I dated 1894, and I think the bell wasn't brought in until 1895. That was my own mistake.
Could you tell me why you founded the Arthur Conan Doyle Foundation? What is its purpose?
Well, I have no children, and I wanted to leave a living memorial to my father. And though my father was a patriot, a very great patriot, as his whole life proved, he was not a nationalist, he was an internationalist. And we're living, I think, today we're beginning to understand the meaning of the word internationalism. And I was determined if I made a foundation to my father, it should not be in England. It should be abroad, an English foundation abroad. Everything here is English. Everything is from my house, family house in England. The construction of the Sherlock Holmes room is an English room of the Victorian period and so on. And I have made, I believe I'm correct in saying, the only English cultural foundation on this side of the Channel. And I think the wisdom of my decision has been proved by the events, because we've had people coming from all over the world, all nationalities, to the Conan Foundation to see it.
Of course, Sir Arthur Conan had enormous associations with Switzerland himself, didn't he?
Yes, he did. They made Holmes an honorary citizen of Maringen, which is near this town, last year, which has never happened before in the history of Switzerland, that a character out of a book should have been made a member with voting rights of a Swiss town, which means, of course, the beginning of a new tradition, because in 100 years' time, they're going to say, but Holmes lived here. He has the proof. There's his citizen. Voting rights, everything. He must have lived here. We'd never have done this otherwise.
You see, we're talking of Holmes again. It's always Holmes that we speak of when we speak of your father.
Well, that's your fault. You've been asking questions.
It isn't to do him justice, really. What was the writing that he was most proud of?
Oh, without doubt, his historical novels. Because they did hold up a mirror to English history. And yet at the same time, they're fascinatingly interesting. And it took him a long time to write. And that's it. He was a craftsman. And in the White Company, he buried himself away for 2 or 3 years, you know. Read nothing but books on the 14th century, when his whole mind was soaked in that period. He picked up his pen and he wrote that immortal work. And I use the word immortal because it was written 80 years ago. It's never been out of print. Never. And I doubt if it ever will be, as long as people like good books.
We were very close family, as you recall.
Oh, very. Extremely close. I think I've suggested that in the fact my father used to come down and read his stories to us in the evening, so we were very united and a very devoted family.